The Airbnb group I was staying with kicked me out of a bed so a cooler guy could sleep in it, but they forgot I was their only ride home, so I left them stranded in the mountains to remind them about respect. The story has been adapted for added entertainment. Continuing, I, 22M, and my friend from college, 27M, were invited on a backpacking trip organized by a friend of his whom he had met while backpacking in Colorado the year before. The girl, Kaylee, 25F, who organized the trip, had booked an Airbnb for all of us to stay the night after we got off the trail from a 3-day trek. There was room for 2 people in each of the 2 beds and room for 2 on the pull-out couch. We all paid evenly for the Airbnb. Of course, we thought Kaylee should have priority for a bed since she had done all the planning, and there was a BFGF couple as part of the 6 of us planning to stay in the Airbnb. So naturally, my friend and I felt we should take the pull-out couch, and this is how it was settled before we ever started the trip. However, midway through the trek, the couple had to turn around and head home. So now there would only be 4 people staying at the Airbnb, and naturally, or so we thought. My friend and I assumed we would now sleep in a real bed. Along with the couple backing out, my friend and I became the only ride for Kaylee and the other guy, Tyler, to get back to the airport in Denver. After dropping them off, my friend and I would have a 14 hours drive back. Tyler is a relatively passive character in this story, as he didn't speak up much for either side and was already designated to share the bed platonically with Kaylee, so you won't hear much mention of him. So when we arrived at the Airbnb, my friend and I set our things next to the real bed that Kaylee hadn't taken and took a cat nap on it. Enter Chris Fisher. Kaylee had invited her friend Chris Fisher to come hang out for the night. Chris lived in Colorado, only a couple of hours away from where we were, and was apparently a celebrity of sorts in her circle. So Chris came in, said hi to Kaylee and Tyler, and was briefly introduced to me and my friend, responding with a simple "what's up?" to the introduction. Chris then started chatting with Kaylee and Tyler while my friend and I went into the room to organize our luggage. Suddenly we heard Chris say, "I need a shower," and he walked into the room without a word to us, plopped his stuff at the foot of our bed, rummaged for his toiletries, and hopped in the shower. After Chris got out of the shower, the group started talking about going out for beers that evening, but knowing we had a 14 hours drive ahead of us. The next day, after dropping Kaylee and Tyler off at the airport, I told them I was going to stay back and get some sleep. Chris had left his bag on the bed, so I moved it to the counter in the living room so he wouldn't forget it. According to my friend, he spent the entire evening in Grand Lake with the biggest douche he had ever encountered. Fisher couldn't stop talking about the obscure world records he had broken or set in the world-renowned sport of ridge running, including his records for the most elevation gain in a day. By repeatedly going up and down a particular mountain, Kaylee was apparently eating it up, utterly starstruck. If you've seen the movie The Other Guys and remember how everyone reacted to The Rock and Sam Jackson's characters, that was exactly Kaylee's demeanor. According to my friend, after returning from the soul-sucking outing, my friend was more than ready to bid Mr. Fisher adieu and never see his face again. Unfortunately, that's not what happened. Kaylee was furious that I was still in the bed. She wanted Chris to have it and brought up the fact that my friend and I were originally designated for the pull-out couch. My friend stood up for us, arguing that not only did it make sense for us to take the Real bed since it was now available, but also that Fisher hadn't contributed anything for the trip. We weren't even told until the last minute that he was coming, and most importantly, I was already asleep in the bed. Kaylee was apparently refusing to have it any other way and wouldn't stop hammering the issue. Finally, Tyler came and woke me up to sleep on the pull-out. It was around midnight, and we needed to be out by 6 a.m. I stumbled into the kitchenette in a sleepy stupor. This is where I got a real taste of the douche that is Chris Fisher for 2 hours in the kitchenette, just 8 feet away from the couch Kaylee insisted we sleep on. My friend and I had to sit and listen to Kaylee and Fisher drone on about their outdoor adventure prowess. They kept boasting about how great they were at skiing, snowboarding, and setting fastest known times on trails. I had no idea until that moment that vacation activities could be such a flex, but they proved that one could make them. Their entire personality and the pinnacle of their life's accomplishments. Looking back, I should have chimed in about how I hiked the Matterhorn in Europe, but they probably would have countered with how they went to Europe too, only harder. My friend was staring at me, seething. He hated that they woke me up, hated that they kicked us out of our bed, and hated the added insult of them having the audacity to chat for 2 more hours right next to where we were supposed to be sleeping about an hour and a half in. As he continued to seethe, he subtly gestured for me to check my phone. I open it and read, "Let's ditch these pricks." As soon as they finally headed to bed, we promptly agreed that Chris Fisher, by taking our place in the bed, had unwittingly taken his place as their ride to Denver. We grabbed our packs by the door and set out for Oklahoma at 3 a.m. sharp. Were we the jerks here? Chris finds and shows up in the comments. This is pretty funny, especially the part where you actually still drove them to the airport. You did an excellent job manipulating this story, Tanner. Commenter responds to Chris, bro, with how much you love yourself. Why haven't you put a ring on it? You seem like you could be pretty chill, but damn, you let your personal achievements rule your personality. Do you have other hobbies? I have a close friend who sounds a lot like you. Every day, he updates me on his personal best cycling time or distance. It's cool you love what you do, but why do you have a personal website listing all these weird achievements? Are you planning to compete in the Olympics someday? Sorry for the verbal diarrhea. I am genuinely curious. Chris responds, since you're curious, I do love myself, just like you should love yourself. But I'm a paid professional mountain athlete, so it's literally my job to post about what I do in the mountains. Personally, I hate social media and wish I didn't have to be on it. But again, it's my job and I love climbing, skiing, and running around the mountains, so I'll keep doing my thing. People who actually know me would speak very differently than this. Oh, it's honestly pretty hilarious that he came up with this whole story. Anyway, hope I answered your question. Have a great evening. 1 day later, so there was indeed some embellishment. Chris asked for this, so no one blamed me for making him and Kaylee look even worse. Everything in this story is true, except for the part about us actually leaving. My friend tried to talk me into it, but I said it was too mean. Even in response to what they had done to us, I couldn't bear the thought of leaving someone hours away from where they needed to be. My friend insisted Fisher would surely be a reliable ride to the airport. In reality, we had told them when we agreed to be their ride to the airport that this would require us to leave very early that morning because my friend and I were cutting it close to make it back to Oklahoma in one stretch, so he could attend his 6 p.m. Central Time class that evening. So even after being treated like dirt, even after they slept in and lollygagged all morning, causing us to leave about 2 hours later than we needed to, we still drove an hour out of our way to take Kaylee and Tyler to the airport. As a result, we ended up being too late for his class. We called friends and family all day to pick their brains about whether we would have been wrong, as I maintained, to leave them, or if we should have, as my friend insisted, left Kaylee and Tyler high and dry. We got mixed reviews on that. We had completely forgotten about the whole scenario until today, while driving to another new adventure in Reading, Michigan, the jerk posts as we love to do on our car rides. That's when we realized this story would be perfect for this forum. Of course, we weren't posting in a forum called Would I Hypothetically Have Been the Jerk If I Had Done the Thing I Thought to Do but was too nice to actually do, so we had to add the alternate ending we've always wondered about. So sorry for embellishing, Chris, but I'm not sure how the reality paints you in any better light. The truth sets us free, I suppose. Months after the Airbnb incident, I decided to host a weekend party to bring all our friends together. To avoid any issues, I requested that everyone contribute a certain amount to cover the costs of food and drinks. I planned everything meticulously, sent out invites, set a fair contribution amount, and made it clear that everyone needed to chip in for the party to be successful. When the big day arrived, everything was ready. The house was decorated and prepared for the celebration. The food was being cooked, and the drinks were chilling. However, in the midst of the party, I got an unexpected visit. Chris Fisher, the same guy who had taken advantage of the situation before, showed up at the door with Kaylee. I was taken aback and a bit annoyed to see Chris there. I remembered how he and Kaylee had treated us last time and realized that he hadn't contributed anything but was still there to benefit from the party without paying. I stood firm on not letting him in, explaining to Kaylee that he hadn't contributed and it wasn't fair for him to benefit without helping. Kaylee was visibly upset by my decision. She made a huge fuss, insisting that Chris should be allowed in and participate in the party. She argued that he was a friend of hers and that it was important for her that he be there. The pressure was so intense that I eventually relented and let Chris in, on the condition that he would not overindulge in the food and drinks. However, as I feared, Chris ended up consuming the bulk of the food and drinks without contributing a single dollar. Kaylee tried to defend him, saying that he was just enjoying himself and that I should be more understanding. But the situation quickly got out of hand. I was furious. Chris was clearly taking advantage of the situation again, and I felt utterly disrespected. Enraged, I decided it was time to take drastic action. Confronting Kaylee and Chris, I made it clear that their behavior was disrespectful and that the party had been compromised because of them. I told them that, due to their unacceptable behavior, they needed to leave immediately. Kaylee tried to argue and defend Chris, but I was resolute. I kicked them out of my house and made it clear that they would never be invited to any future events or gatherings. What was supposed to be a fun and lively party ended up being ruined by people who had no respect for others. In that moment, I felt a sense of relief for having taken a firm stand. I learned the hard way that sometimes it's necessary to be firm to protect what is fair and respectful. Chris and Kaylee were never invited to anything again, and I made sure everyone in my contact list knew that the two of them were no longer welcome. The party went on, but the incident made me reflect on the importance of setting clear boundaries and maintaining respect in personal relationships. The next summer, everyone was excited about an international trip we had planned. We decided to keep the plans a secret to avoid any issues with Kaylee and Chris. Our goal was to enjoy the summer without any tension, but on the day of the trip, we were shocked when Kaylee and Chris showed up at the door with their bags packed. They knew we hadn't invited them, but they decided to join us anyway. With a provocative attitude, they said, "Are you guys the owners of this country?" It was clear they were there to cause trouble, and we had no idea how they found out about our plans. Their presence was obviously meant to ruin our summer. Despite our best efforts to stay calm and avoid direct confrontations, the tension was palpable. Kaylee and Chris behaved in a childish and provocative manner, always trying to interfere and create problems. What was supposed to be a fun and relaxing trip turned into a stressful experience due to their presence. We did our best to keep our distance and avoid interacting with them, but the situation was uncomfortable. Kaylee and Chris made a point of being everywhere we went and participating in any activities we planned. The atmosphere was filled with a constant sense of unease. When the trip finally ended, I was relieved to have survived the ordeal. I decided that the best way to handle the situation was to cut ties with Kaylee and Chris. I blocked Kaylee on all social media and recommended that my friends do the same. It was a relief to finally end the conflict and restore peace in our social circle. With the trip and the stress behind us, we were ready to move on without any more issues. After some time, Kaylee reached out to me. She seemed sincere and apologized for her and Chris's behavior during the trip and the previous incident. It was a surprising moment, and I was torn about how to respond. I decided to seek advice from my other friends about what to do. They suggested that, given our history and the friendship we had with Kaylee, it would be better to forgive her. They believed that, although she had made mistakes, it was important to value friendships and give second chances when possible. With that in mind, I decided to accept Kaylee's apology. I genuinely valued the friendship we had, and I thought it was fair to give her another chance. However, I made it clear that, while I was willing to forgive her, I had no intention of ever seeing Chris again. I was determined to keep my distance from him, as I didn't want to revisit the previous issues. What I didn't expect was the plot twist that followed. Kaylee, in her sincerity, revealed that she was dating Chris. This news was a shock to me, and for a moment I felt disoriented. The situation was more complicated than I had imagined, and my decision to forgive felt even more difficult. Despite this revelation, I stuck to my decision to forgive Kaylee and move on. I told her that I preferred to simply continue with my life, and that there were things that were intolerable, especially after everything that had happened. The friendship with Kaylee was important to me, but dealing with Chris was something I definitely didn't want to repeat. From that point on, everyone went their separate ways. Kaylee and Chris continued their relationship, while my friends and I focused on maintaining our lives in peace and avoiding further complications. The experience taught me the importance of setting boundaries and the need to move forward when things don't work out as planned. Over time, the wounds healed, and we all found a way to move on, respecting our own limits and values.